I'm Josh, I'm a qualified actuary and an investment researcher, and in this video I'm going to run through the top 5 mistakes I made in my 20s so you don't make them too. Mistake number 1 is targeting a level of income rather than accumulating wealth. So I set a goal when I was younger to earn 6 figures by the time I was 30. I ended up hitting that goal when I was 32, and I'll put the difference down to not compromising on some of my principles and also the COVID pandemic. But my mistake here was that I just picked that goal without even thinking about it. I just decided that that was, what I should be doing, and that was a good level of income to earn at a relatively young age. I didn't spend any time at all thinking about whether or not that was the right goal for me, or if it's what I wanted. I also wasn't really ambitious enough. So if you read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, he talks a lot about setting really ambitious goals. So even if you fall short of that goal, you've already made it a lot further than you think you would. So throughout my 20s, I spent my whole time targeting that level of income and not really thinking about anything else, not thinking about my spending habits, not thinking about anything else I could do that could potentially earn more money. I was just laser focused on that goal, and I thought, my current path should get me there on time. It wasn't until I hit that goal that I started to think about the broader things I could do with my life and the many options that are out there. So I would say I got tunnel vision a bit too early. It reminds me of the saying, you spend all this time climbing a mountain to get to the top and realize it was the wrong mountain. So to help combat that, and what got me on the right path, was this book by Naval Ravikant, where he talks about the difference between income and status versus building wealth, and the two are often not compatible. So yeah, I would ask my 20-year-old self to read this book and focus on the wealth section. My second biggest mistake was taking the low-risk default path. So some of my friends joke with me that I did set menu A, which is straight A's at school, first in the STEM subject at a top tier university, top tier grad scheme, qualified as an actuary, stayed in the same job ever since. Aside from medicine, I don't know if there's a more formulaic path out there. The goals just kept getting defined for me, and I just kept looking to that next kind of step to jump over, or hoop to jump through, as people say. And I never really thought big picture about whether or not this is what I actually wanted. There were other options open to me back then, but I never took the time to look or even think about it. I was in this kind of race with myself to get onto the next step without recognizing whether or not it was the race I wanted to be in. I had completely the opposite mindset of, you have plenty of time when you're young and in your 20s, you should take risks because it doesn't matter if you fail, you can pick yourself back up. I was just laser focused on the path I was on. So I would ask my 20-year-old self to read 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, who talks about how he broke free from the formulaic path and started to build something completely new and go in his own direction. So I wish I'd had that in my 20s. My third big mistake was living in tactical hell. So this is a phrase used by Robert Greene in one of his books. I think it's the 33 Strategies of War. And he talks about the importance of elevating yourself above the battlefield into the strategic position so you can see the whole battlefield and you're not just fighting your daily battles. Another way of phrasing this potentially is you need to get meta. So you need to take a step back and just look at the big picture and strategize a bit more longer term. So some examples of this is I spent a huge amount of time studying. I did, obviously all my GCSEs, A-levels, did my degree, did my actuarial qualification, which was another 4 years. I did the ESG CFA, I did the IMC. I kept getting all these qualifications and I was doing more and more exams and more studying, but I never actually learned how to study effectively, which meant I wasted a huge amount of time. I didn't know about active recall and I didn't know about spaced repetition, although I kind of fell upon that eventually. It's probably the active recall I didn't do because I didn't focus on, diving in, prepared to be wrong initially and then move on from there. But yeah, I spent a huge amount of time studying in my life and I never really took a step back to think, how can I study effectively? I also spent a huge amount of time trying to succeed at work. I never really took a step back to understand how I could succeed at work. And a big unlock for me there was just learning about human nature and personalities and how different people operate and how you can best help other people so that they eventually help you. I also spent a huge amount of time trying to lose weight, and I didn't spend much time researching about how to lose weight. So for example, I just was stuck on the whole calories in, calories out mentality, which was effective but unsustainable, and also focused way too much on the exercise part of that equation and not the diet part of that equation. I guess I was living very extrinsically rather than intrinsically. I was reacting to my external environment. I was looking for status. I was looking for what other people thought of me. I was looking to win these tiny battles when really what I should have done is, again, stepped above the battlefield, thought about what do I really want and set about aligning my actions with what I actually wanted to do, not what I thought I wanted to do or what other people were doing. So I would ask my 20-year-old self to read The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. It's an absolutely massive book, but I think understanding human nature and what drives people, what motivates people, and the different sorts of characters you'll find out there on your journey through life and through your work world is just one of the most powerful things you can ever do. So yeah, it's a massive book, bit of a tome, but honestly, absolutely amazing. The fourth mistake I made was partying too much, or maybe putting it in a different way, focusing too much on immediate gratification. So in some areas of my life, I was good at delaying gratification. I studied hard, I got good qualifications, and they're lasting for the rest of my life. But in certain areas of my life, I didn't focus on delaying gratification. Anything, I focused on immediate gratification. So good examples of immediate gratification, I think, is going out partying, because yeah, it's enjoyable at the time, but you have the massive kind of hangover knock-on effect of, you know, drinking, staying up late, not getting good sleep. Food-wise, obviously ate a lot of junk food, opposite of delaying gratification in my opinion. And I think part of it's just because I didn't have that mental model of, if you delay your gratification now, then the benefits accumulate. It's not like that moment passes and then you just get that same moment again in the future. Every time you delay that gratification, it accumulates and the benefits compound. And that's just a kind of a mental unlock that I've only just recently got my head around. Obviously, it's about not being domain specific in certain areas as well. So it's like, this was obvious in my, you know, professional qualifications. It was obvious in investing, where you get the benefits of compound interest. But in my personal life, for some reason, I felt like I had to have the thing now. So that might be, yeah, having some junk food, having a drink, having a, you know, spending some money. Like, you spend that money and you get a bit of instant gratification. But if you save that money, you could potentially keep that money forever. So I think that's a real mental unlock that I wish I'd had in my 20s. Another thing related to this is that if you focus on the here and now and you optimize around the current environment, you become very fragile to change. So when your situation changes, you've optimized around something that's no longer relevant. So the main example here is when I had a kid, I'd optimized my life around, you know, cycling loads, being able to go out with my friends all the time. And then suddenly I was not able to do those things. And my environment changed. I'd optimized for something that wasn't my new normal, because I'd optimized around the here and now rather than the future. And so I had to change what I was optimizing around. And that's been quite painful. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in my 20s chasing transient pleasures, going out, you know, oh, I fancy going to the pub tonight and just going. I also neglected my family, and my mum died when I was 29 suddenly of cancer. So I really regret not spending more time with my family and just prioritizing that a bit more. I remember a specific weekend where I stayed in and read a book and didn't go out partying, didn't see my friends, and actually just, you know, sat inside for a weekend. And that was such a rare occurrence for me that actually that one weekend changed, you know, the trajectory of my life. And that just shows you how much time I was spending out chasing transient pleasures rather than focusing on developing myself. So I would ask my 20-year-old self to read Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday, and that talks about how it's so important to just allocate time to do nothing and think, rather than just reacting all the time and chasing transient pleasures. Stoicism in general is mainly how I've incorporated more discipline and temperance into my life, because it's helped me realize that that is really important and it leads to a better future. And I would also recommend the Bible on delayed gratification, which is the marshmallow test. And this is the test. It gets talked about so much in all these kind of success and self-help books, because the one thing that they could find that was a signal to future success was kids that could delay their gratification in this test. So there we have it. If you're going to do one thing that can set you up for success, it's to delay gratification. And the longer you can delay, the bigger the potential rewards at the end. And the fifth mistake I made in my 20s was that I didn't think holistically. I didn't think in my 20s that what you did at home, what you did at the weekend impacted what you did at work. I didn't really think they were connected. I basically had separate identities. I was like, this is my work self, this is my home self, and this is my, you know, family self. And I didn't realize that all of these were interconnected, and everything down to the kind of content I consumed in my personal life had knock-on effects into my work life. It wasn't until I read an article written by an athlete who said that either they're an athlete or you're not. Because even when you're not on the track, you're constantly preparing for being on the track. So being an athlete is a 24/7 job. You can't eat junk food and still perform on the track. While you're off the track, you're still that athlete and you still have to behave like one. And that's been something that I've tried to bring into my role. I've tried to kind of integrate all different aspects of my identity and bring it into one coherent whole, so everything is working together. And as part of that, I stopped focusing on my weaknesses and started focusing on my strengths. So I was obsessed by, like, you know, so-and-so's better than me at that, or, you know, so-and-so has done really well at that, I should do well at that. I was just constantly looking externally at what other people were doing and trying to kind of, you know, get better at that myself, whereas I didn't sit down and look and be like, look, this is what you are, this is your experience, both, you know, at work, not at work, personal life, this is who you are, this is what you're really good at, let's focus in on that and really press home what you're good at. And so, yeah, you know, a great example of this is when I decided to take up running, because I was always really bad at running, and I thought, oh, I need to get better at running because that's something other people are good at and I need to be good at that. What I should have thought is, you know what, I'm bad at running, that's fine. What I'm really good at, reading loads, being good at maths, understanding complex subjects, let's focus on that. Let's train your mind rather than train your body. body. So I'd ask my 20-year-old self to read Robin Sharma's 5 AM Club, and I think the title here is misleading. I didn't read this book for ages because I just thought, yeah, it's obvious. Get up at 5 AM, you know, it's easy, and then you get an extra hour or so to, you know, think about stuff. But I'd say, one, the benefits of getting up at 5 AM, you wouldn't even like be able to anticipate how much benefit that brings. It ties into the stillness point earlier that I made, but yeah, getting up at 5 AM was the biggest life hack I ever made. And then also, this is just full of absolute gold about daily routines, you know, habit stacking, and how to kind of become this holistic superstar ultimately. So I wish I'd found this book earlier. So there we have it. That was my top 5 mistakes I made in my 20s. This is the video that I would have liked to have seen when I was in my 20s. So I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to hear more from me, don't forget to check out this one here.